Hi, I just thought we would go over some basics. I've been a cabinet maker for 45 plus, heavy on the plus years. And one of the most common cabinets you build in almost every kitchen is a corner cabinet. A corner cabinet might be, a Lazy Susan or a sink or something like that. But let's talk about the 5 things. If you're just beginning in your cabinet career, or if you're getting ready to design, and I design my cabinets always on a piece of MDF like this and draw it out so I know my sizes, and we're going to do that. But there are some basics you need to know every time you design a corner cabinet. The first thing you need to understand, or at least consider in your design, what is your corner cabinet for? Is it a Lazy Susan? Is it a sink? Is it just a transition from wall to wall for storage or whatever? But there are lots of different uses for corners, and you need to know what that use is going to be before you can design it. Now that you've decided what you're going to use your cabinet for, you need to decide how much access you need to have for that use. Access is by how is your door going to open up into your corner space. That's very important. There are angle cabinets that have a 45-degree face. There are corner cabinets that have a door that is a hinged door that makes a square corner. So you need to understand what kind of access you're going to have to your corner space. The next thing you need to consider, number 3 on my list anyway, the next thing you need to consider is what are the size of the cabinets that are coming into your corner. Typically, a corner cabinet will have cabinets that go on either side to transition your corner, and you need to know what size those cabinets are. If it's a base cabinet, they're 24 inches deep. If it's an upper cabinet, they're 12 inches deep. But you could have all kinds of different depths on the corner you're using depending upon what you're doing. You also need to consider what kind of space you need on the inside of your cabinet. So if you've designed how much room you're going to need for access and what you're using it for, okay, now that you're using it for something, what is going to be the space on the inside that you need for that use? A Lazy Susan base cabinet doesn't take up the whole amount of room that is allowed for it, and we're going to show you that. So what kind of space on the inside of your cabinet you need for your use. Number 5 on the list, and the final thing that you need to consider, is how do I get this cabinet in the house? The installation of this cabinet. And I can tell you horror stories about building cabinets that are too big to get through the door. Been there, done that. Anyway, you need to keep in mind your ability to get the cabinet in the house, and then how you install that cabinet once it's there. So keep that in mind as you consider the 5 steps to designing your corner cabinet. I'm going to design a couple of cabinets layout for you as I do this when I'm designing cabinets a lot, because it allows me, if I draw it full size, it allows me to determine the sizes of all of the pieces that I'm going to have to cut out. So it not only makes my design so that I know exactly what I'm building, it gives me a cut list at the same time. A cut list is basically a list of the parts I have to cut. So it's very simple. But I'm going to start with a typical Lazy Susan base cabinet. And I've started a little bit. I'm going to go through what I did and show you how I would draw the rest. But the first thing, like I said, we have to decide what we're doing. Well, our doing is going to be our Lazy Susan. Our access is going to be determined by the size of the corner that we're putting in. Lazy Susan cabinets are typical in the cabinet industry of being 36 by 36. Now, I make mine 34 by 34 to try to shrink up the space that it takes. My access is just a tiny bit smaller, but not enough to really make a big difference as far as accessing the Lazy Susan. And the Lazy Susan that I use on my typical what I do, is a 28-inch full round. So I make my door a 45-degree front on my cabinet because I put a full round Lazy Susan. That just has, for me and my experience, has been the best use of the corner space.
a lot of this stuff that I'm telling you, I'm telling you because of the experience of building hundreds, maybe thousands of corner cabinets over the course of my career. But let's get started. This line here is 24 inches out from the edge. So this indicates the cabinet that would come to the other side. And that's one of the things you need to consider, what cabinets are on the side. This is a base cabinet, so there's going to be base cabinets 24 inches deep on that side and 24 inches deep on this side. Again, this line indicates the 24-inch depth. I've measured out, this is my 34 this direction, and I've made a little indicator on this side. And I just draw this out with a framing square. I mark my measurements, my dimensions, and then I just take my framing square because I've got a good square piece of wood here. And I just start drawing my lines. That would be the 34-inch mark. The second mark that I put here is the thickness of my panel. And so it's 3/4 of an inch because I build my cabinets out of 3/4 inch material all the time. We're going to extend our line out there a little bit. So here's our line there. Now I'm going to, again, like I say, this line here is my cabinet depth of the cabinet that comes into it. I'm going to extend that line over to my other marks. So I now know where my cabinets meet my Lazy Susan by these 2 points right here. By laying my straight edge from point to point, that gives me the front of my cabinet. Oh, I didn't draw a very good line there so you could see it. That's better. Okay, that is the face of my cabinet. So on my Lazy Susans, I build a face frame cabinet. We're going to link you to a cabinet that I drew out, designed, and built. So you can see how I go through the process for transitioning my drawings into cabinets. But right now, let's just remember that we've taken into consideration what we're doing, what cabinets are to the side, and what our access is. Now we need to take into consideration how big we need on the inside. Like I say, our cabinet, our Lazy Susan appliance that we have put in is a 28-inch appliance. I always allowed 29 inches in the interior of my cabinet. We're going to burn an inch. We're going to come out here and we're going to go 30 inches. And then there's a 1/4 inch back. So I would again take my straight edge. There's the back of my floor of my cabinet and the 1/4 inch back that goes with it. I would do the same from this side here. I'm not going to go ahead and finish drawing it out, but I would do the same thing here. This becomes dead space in the back because it's not needed. And the reason we make this a little bit smaller is if we made this cabinet full depth all the way out and your Lazy Susan tray only fit in here, this space would be places for things to fall off and become lost in the land of never recovery. You don't want to have that on a Lazy Susan. You want to be able to have your Lazy Susan unit come fairly close to the outside. Now, let's back up a little bit. If this were, again, this is a base cabinet. If this were a sink cabinet, we would have to determine the size of our sink, expanding our walls out to allow for our sink to fit in here. Our access would be much bigger. We would extend our walls all the way to the back here because of plumbing. But just these are things to consider. Always consider what you are using your corner for, the cabinets that come into it, the access, and then when you build a big cabinet like that, how do I get it in the room? What is the installation requirements? If you have plumbing, you have an installation requirement that you have to consider. All of these things are things to consider and take into account as you build your corner cabinet and design it first. So anyway, let's go to an upper cabinet. I'm just going to show you a few of the things in an upper cabinet, and then I have a special thing to show you for that oddball case that comes up every once in a while. I've gone ahead and drawn out, this is a Lazy Susan upper. So this is a 12-inch upper cabinet to this side, a 12-inch upper cabinet indicated by this line to this side. A Lazy Susan upper is always 24 by 24, and we make it full depth to the wall. There'd be a 1/4 inch back out here, and the Lazy Susan tray is 18 inches or 19 inches in diameter, depending upon the company that you buy from. I always make mine, like I say, with the 45 and a full round, just because the access is nicer. It gives you a little larger access. There's actually a larger access on your upper than there is on the lower unit, because of the fact that you are tying into shorter cabinets and you still have a Lazy Susan tray. This is the cabinet that I did the video on, and then we went through and did the build. And I really want you to go through and look at that video, because we design the cabinet, we go through everything, and then we actually build it. And you'll see all of the things that you have to take into account as you transition from a design to an actual build. I have a special cabinet I want to design for you based on a job I did several years ago. We did a butler's pantry. We had cabinets on one wall that were 12. I've drawn out a couple of lines here. The cabinets on one wall were floor to ceiling 12-inch deep cabinets. This was a big butler's pantry. And so we did some shelves open. This was all open shelving. We did open shelves on this one side, 12 inches deep, all the way up. On this wall over here, they wanted some additional depth, and we had room to put an open cabinet all the way floor to ceiling again, 18 inches deep. And so we had a transition to go from two different depths for the corner. They also had some special needs or uses that they had wanted to have for this space in the corner. And so they wanted a larger access than, we could have gone right down and designed this thing for a dead corner and not had anything in the corner. Or we could expand it and have just a little bit of an access. But again, using our formula of what cabinets are on the side, what kind of space we need, and what kind of access we need to use that space, we were able to determine that she needed a big space. She was actually going to put a turkey roaster in here, and she wanted to be able to put some big pots and pans and things in this corner that didn't fit on her 18-inch shelf and were way too big for her 12-inch shelf. So I think we came out 24 inches. It's been a while ago, so I'm just going to, I think we came out 24 inches on our, I gotta put my glasses on, can't read my tape measure or my pencil mark. Oh, look at that, there it is. Okay, 24 inches on the one side, but then we went 32 inches on the other side. So we had kind of an odd shaped corner, because not only did we have different walls, we had different access needs for that wall. So let's extend our lines and show what we would end up with. Again, I like doing this, and I want, if you're just getting started, or even if you're a seasoned cabinet maker, when you learn to do this layout on just a sheet of 1/4 inch MDF, you learn to really decide what your cut lists are going to be, what your accesses are going to be, and really kind of almost see the cabinet. Now, I'm old school. I don't have SketchUp and CAD or anything like that, and if you have those capabilities, maybe this is, a little too elementary for you, but for me, this is how I designed my cabinet. Now you can see, by going from point to point like we do in our Lazy Susans, let's put our square here And here, and you'll need a good straight edge anytime you do anything like this. A framing square works really well. Here was our line of access to our cabinet, and she was able to put anything big in here and put it to the back side. We built our cabinet all the way to the back on this. She had a nice large access and a nice large space, bigger than what she would have had for either of her wall size cabinets, and be able to put her big things here in the corner that she wanted. And then you would go back, just like I showed you on the other ones. You would go back, you would lay out your cabinet materials. So 12 inches deep. I'm going to turn it around here because my line isn't long enough. "12 inches deep there. Got some odd angles to work with, and I remember having to work with those odd angles, but those are the things you take into account when you design and draw something up like this. It gives you those things that you have to deal with. And so you would draw in your side cabinets. Then how would you do your face? We just banded the face of this material, and as I remember, we worked this corner so I didn't have this real hard angle to deal with. And then we put a 1/4 inch back on it. But I just wanted you to see that by doing the layout and considering the cabinets that come into the size, what you're using the space for, your access requirements, all of those things to take into consideration, you can build any corner cabinet for any reason by just following the steps. I've done it for years, and you can too, just like I did right now on Woodworking with Wes.